All I guess. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. And you still have the boredom to watch this show. This is Lucian Belsan with the Freedom Alternative. We are in Deutschland, and I've just been to an AfD event, and I'm here with Able with the
Weltraumaffen.
Die Weltraumaffen?
Yes.
Okay. Able, welcome to the Freedom Alternative.
Hello, Lucian.
So, first thing first, introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, I run a German podcast with a few fellow other Germans. We got together during the time of Gamergate and discussed at that time under Gamergate Deutsch, in German, the subject. And after a while, like also with the Cologne incident, we set up a general show where we also discuss not only gaming related topics, and then we branch out into geopolitics. We have huge different areas which we cover: culture, politics, geopolitics, but with a focus on the progressive left specifically, and to oppose them, and to have a little bit a finger on their pulse and to see where they're heading next with their insanity.
Right. And how did that go so far? When did you start? You started in 2015, I guess?
2015.
Around the same time I started this channel. How did that go?
Yeah, we have a slow growth. The algorithm of YouTube was better back then, but our show was from the quality not so good. So, I mean, I can see that YouTube has some efforts to throttle here and there, but our show was also not that great. So, like, point taken, we have grown now to something like 8,000 subscribers, almost 9,000, and we have a regular view base of like 400 or 500 people watching live, and then like 4 times that amount checking in under the week, because not everybody has Sunday time, but it's like our church where we sit together. And
the Church of the Holy Trolling, I guess. I want to linger a little bit more on the Gamergate point, because I learned today that Gamergate is still being discussed in Germany, whereas in the English-speaking world and in the French-speaking world, it's kind of a game over.
Yeah, kind of. But from the progressive journalists, they simply bring the topic up every time they can mention. They want to build, so to say, I call it Meinungsmathematik, opinion mathematics. If you want to slander somebody, you bring up Gamergate because it's negative connotation already. You tie that to a name of a new event, and every time something horrible happens, they just grab the name Gamergate, put it to the event, and so we then see the article coming out, and then we're like discussing it in our show. Try to get the Presserat involved. It's similar to SPJ Airplay, like the Society of Professional Journalists in the United States. We have a similar organization in Germany where you can make a complaint. Normally nothing happens if you do so, but once in a while you get through, and then you get a little bit more coverage for unethical press coverage.
So you get to roll the propaganda a little bit more.
Yeah.
In more practical politics terms.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The reason we're even talking to each other today is because we bumped into each other at an AfD event. So we're taping this on May the 11th. I have no idea when I'm gonna publish this, because editing while on the road, I'm still gonna be for more than another week in Germany. But we went at an AfD event held at the German Parliament, at the Reichstag. Any impressions? You will be seeing it. I mean, I'll post at least the end of it, and it's mostly in German, but yeah, whatever, you'll be contributing with the subtitles. Any impressions?
I have to say, sometimes there are information which make you a little bit black-pilled, and I was very happy to be invited today there. That was great from them. Like, it was good that I could have a look for myself, but the event was like free alternative media in Germany, and what the party could do better, what they're doing worse, and how they could their politics eventually help with some shadow banning going on, and the level which I encountered was just a bit too low. Like, the first lawyer to hold a speech introduced a basic press codex, and also according to the law what you're allowed to state in Germany, but Jesus Christ, was very basic stuff, and like was really for plebs. I mean, sure, it's alternative media, they're all plebs, but I would have I thought it gonna be a little bit more with substance. It was like one guy was telling us how to use a Flickr account, and with all the love of God and everything in the universe, like Jesus Christ, if you explain to people a Flickr account, like they're not media, like I can't even put it in words.
Yeah, I tried a little bit to network with some of the other alternative media I invited, and let's just say I wasn't particularly enchanted. What do you make of the state of the alternative media in Germany? Because AfD, it makes sense from their perspective to try to connect with the alternative media, because the alternative media are the ones that at least in part contributed to their success. Of course, their messaging and their platform was part of their success for sure, but part of it was the coverage offered by the alternative media. What do you make of the state of the alternative media?
The state of the alternative media is not so great. Like, we would need an insurgency like Breitbart popping up in Germany. Would be very cool if they would have make a German office somewhere. But I say that with all the love for the alternative media, like they shall not be pity with me being snobby with them. But Jesus Christ, Germany, where are you heading? Like, not like everybody has problems. They get sued by the NGO, which is partially state funded. They have troubles even getting articles out. Then you get throttled. You can lose the chance to pop up in the search engine. Like, it's pretty much a bloodbath. Like you can't grow, and if you grow, there's directly an NGO to sue you. That's a pretty terrible state, basically.
It sounds to me that Breitbart could help, because at least Breitbart has an army of lawyers on speed dial. It's one of the reasons why they never actually get to a lawsuit, because they always settle it out of court, almost always favorable to them. But even at this event we heard a bit of, or at least if I understand, again, I only understand some German, I don't speak German, so correct me if I understood it wrongly, but I heard a bit of sneering, as in Breitbart man bad, a lot of bad shit talk about Steve Bannon.
The lawyer who introduced the basic press codex for Germans, he explained that I was in one of the bad examples how to not do press. He listed Steve Bannon, and he quoted him, let the media feed shit, feed shit to the media, and he quoted him there. And also with Andrew Breitbart, he said, like, facts get shared, not opinion, not half pieces, but facts are getting shared. And Steve Bannon is also that kind of person who encourages that. And yes, he said, like, feed the media shit, but that's for the progressive media, like that's what they're doing anyhow.
Yeah, the context was to feed their own shit back to them.
Yes,
as in turn the tables.
Yeah, turn the tables. And I have there was also the subject brought up that you Media Alternative Bild in Germany.
A newspaper.
A newspaper, which is like more right-leaning than the Bild-Zeitung. And then I'm thinking, like, yeah, well, but Bannon man bad, Breitbart man bad, but we need alternative media. And then I'm like, look guys, I love you all, and it's great that we come together, but this seems like semi-professional. I don't know where we're heading with that.
Well, we're semi-professional too. Yeah. I mean, we're taping with 2 tripods in a hotel room somewhere in Berlin, of course. But I mean, it's semi-professional is not necessarily bad, but if the research work is semi-professional, that tends to show.
Yes.
And it seems that that's pretty much. But again, even that is still better than the mainstream media, which don't even do semi-professional research. Because after the event, I got to meet Milo again. You got to meet Milo. We met Milo Yiannopoulos, and he had a point when he mentioned that the mainstream press is to the pits, I believe that was his phrasing. He was trying to be nice. Yes. He was really trying to be nice. So, even half-baked is still better than the mainstream.
Yeah, it is. Because, like, also with the mainstream, if you try to correct it, you have a really hard time getting even through to the journalists. And the thing is, like, if I need an hour to tell you that you made a mistake, and then you are looking with a high nose down upon me, plab, and you have your Haltung. In German, Haltung means like, yeah, you have to have the right opinion.
Puff your chest.
Yeah, puff your chest, and you're making your righteous sentiment, which is normally progressive, and then like how do you operate with that? The article is shared already. You get 5 days later a correction. Yeah, thanks for nothing. Applause. That's
at the very least, with the alternative media being smaller organizations, probably you're gonna get to talk with the editor-in-chief within 10 minutes.
Yeah. But at our side at the Weltraumaffen, it's also, we get asked quite often for our sources because we have some outrageous claims, which are true, and sometimes people are shocked when they hear that. And so we provide those sources over and over again, and at some point it's already quite tiresome, but we do so. And we do so regularly, because reality has a right-wing bias, so it's kind of easy to provide proof for what we're claiming. So,
explain to me if you understand it better than me, because my understanding is that Milo could not speak at the Bundestag because potato. That's the best understanding that I got.
There were some legal reasons that Milo's event was interpreted as a campaigning event, and the event was itself in the Bundestag, and you're not allowed to campaign within the Bundestag, and that's why Milo was disinvited from the event, and then the event shut down, and then we went to a bar, and there Milo then was allowed to speak legally. But I'm also not sure about the law exactly, but that's how they put it.
Yeah, but the whole event was about how to campaign, and it was a campaign-related event. And all the political parties in the Bundestag hold these kinds of events. I mean, AfD is not the only one who's doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think tomorrow or Monday, the SPD has a very similar event to the one that we've just attended to.
I don't get it.
It's probably the issue of the blurred lines. Can you explain that a little bit more with the limits of the law in Germany? Because that's a very interesting concept that probably our American friends will have a tough time understanding.
In Germany, like when you complain to a politician, they're often saying, das ist alles klar geregelt. That's all clearly regulated. And normally when you come to free speech, it is not clearly regulated. And you as the average citizens, you have to you watch your mouth, you think before you say something, specifically on the internet. Like your word can be reproduced, and so you're like under a huge amount of pressure to actually phrase stuff right, because you don't know the different gray zones where you can get sued and not. And it's actually not only in terms of free speech. We have quite some areas where the law is simply a little bit wobbly, where you're like, okay, that person probably will go to jail for that, and then you follow the trial and they're not getting to jail, and you're like, okay, I'm semi-literate, I have a friend who's a lawyer, I can ask him, and the lawyer explains to you, in that case, and then you're like, look, as a pleb, I need to know what I'm allowed to do and not, to a certain extent.
Where is the standard?
Like, I don't need to know the entire law, but if it's wobbly and I cannot know where the lines is, and you have multiple lines, and depends on what the judge eat for breakfast. No, I mean, that's for Jesus, but like, it's tough.
It definitely seems random from a pleb perspective.
Yeah, from a pleb perspective, yes, it seems random.
Right. Does the AfD have anything in mind to do about that?
I actually don't know about that one. But I think the easiest way to get that somewhere in a party is the AfD, because the other parties, they're kind of a little bit too established. They have like their small towers where they live. Recently, FDP is getting conquered by progressive forces in their small tower. Let's see how that will work out.
For those who don't know German politics, FDP is the quote-unquote classical liberal party, very left-wing on the culture, very right-wing on the economics, and as a result they had the cultural vulnerability, and most recently they cowed to the consensus demand of having a quota for women.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we all need more women in politics.
A woman.
In the country that's been ruled by a female dictator for the last 14 years.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense.
Absolutely, because like if the women, if there are not enough vaginas in the Bundestag, then Big Vagina gets angry, and Big Vagina has a lobby operation in every party, and they sit kind of everywhere. They want to do it on UN level and EU level and in German federal level, and big vagina is kind of everywhere. But if you phrase it like that, people call you, oh, you're paranoid, and they're like, look, there's the
It's
EU.
not paranoia when they're really after you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a EU document where they're calling that the used to know press freedom needs limitations because we need to combat gender stereotypes, and the newspapers shall get special officers who enforce certain speech codes.
This area of Berlin where we are now has seen that before. It was called the political officer in every institution of the working people, and usually that political officer used to work for the Stasi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
It's
meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, it's like this time with gender, because like gender is great, like Judith Butler. Yeah.
Well, that's terrible. With the I want to see that EU document, because maybe
I will send it to you.
maybe we can use it for our some of our purposes back home in Romania. But political officer in the newspaper. Sorry, that's new information for me. Jesus Christ!
I told you, like, we have a lot of hard information, and the people are always like, "Oh, that can't be real." And
oh no, I'm sure it's real. I just need a document to give it to other players who won't believe me. I'm sure it's real. I mean, I wouldn't put it past the EU. I mean, the EU is the same institution that wanted to quite literally jail children under 14 for criticizing feminism in the classroom. It's called the EU Framework for Promotion of Tolerance.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure this one with the newspapers is actually softcore by EU standards. I'm sure it's true, but for other claims I might need the
proper documentation.
Proper documentation, yes. We're heading towards the European elections. All over the 28 countries that are unfortunate enough to be members of the European Union. And over the last 4 days, since I arrived in Germany, I've been studying carefully how the election campaign is going on, especially in the far west, in the Köln and Mönchengladbach area, and Düsseldorf and Bonn. And I've seen things that I thought they were guns, such as huge posters with Lenin and Marx.
Die marxistische-leninistische Partei Deutschlands.
Yeah, the German Marxist-Leninist Party.
Yeah.
I gotta give them for points for honesty. I mean, if all leftists were just as honest as the German Marxist-Leninist Party, that would be quite progress in the politics. But on a more serious note, what do you make of all this? Of the campaign running so far?
I mean, you get fed everywhere the point that Europe, bigger, greater, together is better. But even if you would be not even opposed to the EU, and you would think that would be a really good idea, there is nothing really much to show for it, despite like Schengen or the euro currency. But despite those, you don't really have anything of a success to show. So
there's cheaper bills on the phones.
Yes, so I yeah, but even that was regulated by the market before the
most
EU,
of it, yes.
Before the EU stepped out.
Yeah, the EU regulation came after the market had already reduced like 80% of the price anyway.
And so for me, I have the feeling that it's more an emotional thing. So to say, we are part of this great one thing, this bigger thing. It's greater than ourselves, greater than the nation. And the Germans, they have always, like, with their own nation, they're downtrodden over the history. And then you see, like, you are granted this not free pass from history, but you're granted, so to say, a second chance that you're now become a European and you're not a German anymore. And I think this is the greatest selling point, because if you're after the facts, there's not much to show. But if you're like on an emotional level, then you're like, yeah, great, we get a big EU. And so when I see the voting campaigns, yeah, they are all just like appeal to emotional level. There's not much logic involved. But I guess that's kind of a state of humans in general. Maybe that's also overvaluation of logic by my side, could be as well. But Yeah.
Would it be? I mean, it sort of makes sense. People want to be part of something greater than themselves. Maybe not you and I, but most people do.
Yeah.
And as a result, since they dropped Christianity altogether, I mean, this is a post-Christian country, by and large. You have to replace it with something.
Yeah, and then you believe in this oneness. Like you have now, you have the drive to be part of a greater community, and you lose the spiritual edge, and then you feel kind of lonely. You feel downtrodden. You don't have a connection to the people around you, and then suddenly this huge project shows up. This totalitarian temptation, in my opinion, because it has a totalitarian undercurrent. Absolutely, it's just like dressed nicely with a stars banner, but user rating is 1 star, not all stars.
Yeah. Today, as I was heading towards the Bundestag for the event, I saw definitely for the except for the protests that are either for or against Brexit, but usually those against. But other than those, you don't usually see regular people flying EU flags on the street for no reason, essentially.
Yeah.
But there were quite a few of them in the park next to the Bundestag. Even though I thought it was a protest or something, or I don't know, a march. No, it was just.
Yeah, when you go into the Bundestag, you probably get handed those.
Yeah, but these was outside and they were waiting to get in, or either just walking around the park. That's what I'm saying. Why?
That's a very good question. If that I could answer.
It seems to be maybe not nationwide, and probably not nationwide. I didn't see it in Köln, for instance. But there is an undercurrent of EU nationalism that exists here that simply doesn't exist in other parts of Europe.
Most certainly. And it's the easy way out for the Germans, so to say. Like, we're no peace-loving, we're friendly, we go from one extreme to another extreme. Like, first we want to impose our borders on our neighbors, and now we want to de-establish our own borders and devolve in this blob of a superstate. I mean, like, sometimes the fear on the international level, geopolitical level, I can somewhat get that you're like, okay, India, China, Russia, US, and then you would have a EU superstate. But I personally think, like, I used to think that in the past, often on the geopolitical grand chessboard. But I think, like, we have NATO, kinda. The intermarium is coming, and the thing is, the diversity of Europe is kind of what gives Europe strength. And if you try to force the German way of conducting the economy on the French or on the Italians, that won't work. Like, you have a different ways of life grown through thousands of years in Europe, and if you make this huge thing, then you have like psychological engineering in classrooms for like a national identity which is not there, with so many different flavors. That's a recipe for chaos, for Babylon, where everybody talks in different languages and doesn't understand each other anymore. And kind of what I fear is that the strengths of Europe will get lost if you try to put it in this amorphous blob. And when you have the different nations standing out, then you have actually the true strengths of Europe. And not just like a fancy toy for people who study political science and with utopian
It's really
ambitions.
interesting because even United Germany now, the Bundesrepublik, already has at least 4 different flavors within itself. But Europe overall has probably at least 60 different flavors within itself. So the idea of unifying them all, as in uniformly, that sounds like a bit out of a loony bin.
Yeah, like, and why so much re-engineering of stuff? Like, why you just can't go with what's already established and what has proven in time, and why you need to override it with this amorphous totalitarian temptation which we're facing? Because, like, if they try to build the state further and the state always grows. Like a small state
it's one of those facts of life. Yeah.
Yes, like
if you don't guard against it, liberty yields, government grows. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the state will grow, and like what you guys doing is like with the best of intentions, and I feel it so often. Yeah, but the idea is so good. Yeah, there are plenty of good ideas, which just sounds nice but are not workable in reality.
Yeah, one good idea is it would be nice if we were to hold this interview on a beach villa over in Cyprus, preferably with much more expensive equipment. It's a
Or
nice...
in Hawaii.
Or in Hawaii, yeah. I heard that's a very popular place to hold such interviews, politics-wise. But it's a very nice idea, but not particularly workable in reality. Yeah. I was reading in the train, I think, there's a lot of state subsidy for outright partisan propaganda. I mean, on one hand, Milo is not allowed to speak in the Bundestag because of a partisan thing. Okay, fine. But on the other hand, is Deutsche Bahn, or is it Die Bahn, publishes propaganda newspapers, giving them for free. You pay them through your nose in the trains. Telling you, depicting stories like talking about populism with 2-year-olds.
That
how
story
is that
was
acceptable?
That was really crazy in the train, in the current Ausgabe, in the current issue, in the Bahn pamphlet, where they describe like different projects in the Bahn and what you have to eat. And there's a story where there's an interview about Europe, and there's a lady who travels with her 2-year-old and I think 5 or 6-year-old, 7-year-old. But the one was 2, and then she describes how awesome it is to jump from city to city in the train, and you're like making a circle from Germany over France and then to Spain and to Italy, and then they're riding in there. That the mother says like, it's so nice abroad, not those evil populist nationalist politicians who are trying to ruin the stream. And I'm like, you're on a train, you brought a ticket, and that dream is ruined by what? And you're like with your 2-year-old discussing that. I mean, I have a 2-year-old, and we're not discussing politics.
You're not discussing the evils of populism with a 2-year-old?
No.
Thank God you don't have a Barney Vernet here like they have over in Norway, because they would visit you for improper education.
Yes. I mean, with mine I have to discuss that she's not allowed to get shekels twice.
Oh, that's terrible. You're depriving the poor kid of the good stuff in life.
Yes. I'm an evil patriarch.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, although if the feminists hear, they'll probably start complaining. But and the reason I'm asking you is because Milo mentioned in his speech that there's one thing that Germans tend to be bothered about is double standards. But then again, he continued correctly. But then they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, because my next question was, how is it the public not bothered by this, by these kinds of consistent and long-term double standards?
I think for quite a few of them, it's atomization, that they're simply thinking for themselves, and they're not reaching out. They are not trying to get in touch with anybody. Let it be Twitter's maybe a bad example, but make a Twitter account and check certain hashtags, or to reach out to your to an alternative news website, or like to simply get into contact with another person who thinks maybe a little bit similar, to see that you're simply not alone with what you're doing, like you're not an alien, like there are plenty of you. And I think one reason why people are not doing anything is, first of all, the atomization. Like you drink a beer in the evening, you watch some stuff on the TV, which is brainwashing anyhow, like Ben Shapiro's book about Hollywood. Everybody should read it.
Primetime propaganda, how Hollywood brainwashed your children.
Yes.
Something like that, yeah.
But despite that, atomization, and another part is demoralization. Quite a lot of people are thinking like this is a huge machine of politics, and I'm unable to do something, and I'm able. I know something to do about it.
Legit.
No, and besides that, I mean, yes, there was, for instance, in the classical liberal party, the progressive wing, which got a hold on there, but they're only doing that because too many people are sitting on their couches or being lazy or being atomized. Like there's a kind of war in politics going on, and which direction it will go is decided by the people. And
not even that is always permanent. It can consistently be changed oftentimes.
Yes. And if the people would be just a little bit more upgoing, doing something, and even though you don't reach out to any activists or something, just get your facts in order. Like maybe you keep a journal and you write your sources down and you organize your stuff a little bit, and then you can discuss a little bit better. You can go to an internet forum, influence a little bit the undercurrent there. And if a lot of people do that, like 1 hour per week, if that 1,000 does, that can counter already NGO like the Amadeo Antonio Stiftung, which is state government funded.
Well, now that you brought up NGOs, I have to ask. I know the answer, but for the audience, it's really important. Give us an overview about the state of the so-called civil society. It's basically the full civil society in the Gramscian sense, but get a bit into the details, because I'm sure for our American friends in particular, because for them, when I tell them, they say that I must be joking when I said there are no such thing as NGOs anymore.
In Germany, you get over the Ministry Against Man, you get a funding.
It's the Ministry of Family Affairs? Or
exactly.
Gender equality and women or something like that.
Yeah. And you get 120 million euros from there for the campaign Demokratie Leben, called Living Democracy. And they distribute the funds to different NGOs. And we had in our show often already a look through what the projects they are funding. Normally you have gender sensitive language already in the topic.
Gender mainstreaming.
Gender mainstreaming, like social justice talking points. They're so often like the amount of time you need to look into all of those NGOs. You could probably make a 70-80 hour stream and you would not even be through it. But you have plenty of them and they all get a little bit money here, a little bit money there. Then you have on the federal level also some projects which they do together. Like it's not only the 120 million, they also get donations, they make projects, they're together with schools. Sometimes they accidentally finance Salafists, like because gender mainstreaming is great and yeah,
the Salafists agree as long as you give them the money.
Yeah, because it was a project was like doing something against hate, and then they accidentally, like, don't say it's evil when this could be explained by stupid, but Jesus Christ, come on, you send money to where the Interior Intelligence Minister is having an eye on that NGO, and you end up giving them money, and like, Jesus.
In fairness, these kinds of accidents, some of them intentional accidents, but some of them pure stupidity, were pretty common in Denmark until the government just simply decided to ban that particular area altogether because it was too hard to untangle which is which. And also I presume here is the same as it is in Eastern Europe. There's also EU funding. So another layer of bureaucracy, but still taxpayers' money. So in the end, the non-governmental NGO becomes our branch of the government.
Yeah, it's really interesting when they want to propose a new law, which the ideologues and the core activists cooked up. Then they discuss the matters and they have their ties into the politics. And you have then NGOs being flooded with money who develop campaigns, who make it appear to be relevant. And then you have the decision here that you want to make the law. You have what you want to do here. Then you finance, you get your hill, and then you have your friends in the media. And then you engineer from the start what you want to implement. And sometimes when the feminists make a campaign, you have within 12 minutes and different outlets, everywhere articles coming out, like really appears to be on a mailing list. But then you look like at the whole value chain of creation of progress in the society, like where you see like a law is proposed, doesn't get through, financing comes from the Ministry Against Man. The NGOs cook up their propaganda, hire an amateur actor to make a feminist news channel, and the stuff like that happens. And it's like, to simply document it, that would be a full-time job for several people, and you would only focus on progressive stuff. Like, there's more to have a look into than only the progressive ones. And
there is an academic word for that. It's called ventriloquism. So basically the government talks to itself, by itself, about what itself should do, and itself is funded by itself.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds crazy when you put it in these words, but it's a very similar modus operandi we can find in the European Commission, because
Yes.
that one I studied more than the German government, but it's very, very similar.
And we have discussed that in our podcast, Die Weltraumaffen, the space monkeys. We discuss that regularly every week, and every week we have something. And we also discuss quite often NGOs from there. If you would put only our material together, you would get at least 100 hours just describing basic ongoings without even having a check in the organization itself, like calling their ones to get some more details or something. Like, only that you look at a web page, a campaign they made, how much money they spent. Recently we had 60,000 euro for a Doppel-Einhorn. Like, you have a unicorn and you have a Doppel-Einhorn, a double unicorn. And that was against hate speech. They got 63,000 or 53,000 euro for that. Made a Twitter account, make a small child's toy with the double unicorn, and are against hate speech. Got 300 followers, and I'm like, look, of course, you guys are not getting super particularly rich by that, but your activists enjoy making such projects, and they're all government funded. And okay, some of them are really incompetent, they go nowhere, but sometimes it helps getting a law passed. And it reminds me a little bit of shit posting on 4chan. Like, you post, and then suddenly one meme pops up, and that's then the law, because like you stir and stir, and all those NGOs do their projects, and then one is good, and then you can law.
Probably that's why they're getting so afraid of free speech, because non-leftists have started to learn this technique and have started to apply it pretty consistently. Sure, non-leftists don't necessarily, I mean, they rarely get government funded, maybe in Poland a little bit, but in general, non-leftists don't get. But if that same tactic is applied consistently, eventually non-leftists start winning battles as well. So that's probably why there's this fear of free speech within the establishment. Talk to me a little bit about the language, because while we were waiting for Milo, someone else noticed the name of your podcast, the Space Monkeys.
Yes.
And there is a point to be made about language, isn't it?
Yeah, in Germany, like on the language front, we're pretty strong. Like, and how to say, we had a discussion today in the Bundestag that one person said Lügenpresse, and that was haram, because you don't say that because connotations of history. And then
like the Catholic Church history, because that's where the word comes from.
Yes.
That's so bad?
Yes.
So Catholic is bad?
Yeah, Catholic, that's, like, the religion is bad. We need to overcome that to get
Except Islam.
Except Islam. Islam is good, because they're the underdogs.
I see. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anyway, carry
perfect sense. And instead of then the Lügenpresse, you say the Lückenpresse. And
isn't that the same thing?
It's kind of the same thing, but you kind of make a nod and a kowtow to the political correct establishment, that you say like, okay, I know that word is not okay, so I use another one, you say Lückenpresse, and then you get the same treatment than if you would say the Lügenpresse. And today I learned a new word, Erziehungspresse.
The what?
Erziehungspresse. Education press.
So
and now eventually they want to use that word to describe the same old boring story of the media being not so much in bad with journalistic standards, because reality has a right-wing bias if you...
Or at the very least a non-leftist one.
Or at least a non-leftist one, and if you make an accurate portray, like normally the press looks a little bit different. And with our podcast, Die Weltraumaffen, we always have a language play. Like last time was like human-made gender change. Okay, it worked in the translation, but we can always play with the words there and to get on the wording front and the framing front a little bit better, and we often get applause.
Because framing is at least a third of the debate.
Yeah, yes.
The one who gets to frame the debate has the first shot at winning it.
Yes, they recently also had a huge scandal that they invited a lady who works with the guy together who wrote how conservatives, how is this called again? I forgot the name. She wrote a book with a famous George Lukianov. Was he that?
George Lukianov is the one with the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education.
No, that one was the good guy. No, but we had recently a lady who has a framing institute, which was one person, and then she introduced to the öffentlich-rechtliche, the public broadcast, Staatsfunk we say, but it's also haram. It's like Lügenpresse. You're not allowed to say that. And she introduced also framing for the press, and they wanted to say Gemeinwohlpresse, which means like a public service press for Gemeinwohl. It's like really positive framing for the health of society. And the funny thing is they kind of introduced crazy framing, but they're framing already on all fronts, and then everybody turned around and said, no, we wouldn't frame. And I'm like, but that's how it works. You're like saying you're not framing, but like it's in the articles, like you have your similar buzzwords and then your little thought patterns of arguments which are in the discourse and the ones which are haram. And
so the individual who writes the framing manual then says framing doesn't exist.
She insisted that it works to a degree, but the press then derided her. It's not that important, and we can't do that.
So the followers of the framing manual said that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like me saying that these cameras don't particularly work. They just happen. The videos just happen to emerge.
Yeah, it's magic.
By magic, by jinn.
Yes.
Because we're in Dar al-Islam, so it works. Right. Any I wouldn't say predictions, because nobody should be making predictions, as we kind of both know now at this point that those who make predictions tend to be quite wrong.
Yeah.
Whether rightfully or wrongly, it doesn't really matter. But any hopes for the near future with your podcast and in general with the politics of Germany?
Being a spearhead of an avant-garde who disestablishes the EU? No, my hopes is that I get simply a little bit more people listening, although the growth has been really slow. I would be actually already happy if we just don't get censored. Like that would be great already if that just doesn't happen, because sometimes our quality can be also improved. Like it doesn't always have to be that you're from outside somewhere throttled. But we sometimes get a feeling that's the case. Recently also got a strike, but that one was kinda justified. We had one stream where we quoted the Pornhub user statistics, and then YouTube gave us a strike because we quoted that from their blog, the statistics, because Pornhub.com, and then you're not allowed to quote from their statistics because it's a porn link. And there we got a strike.
That's idiocy. I mean, someone followed it and reported it specifically.
Yes.
The algorithm could not have catch that one, and someone at YouTube really loves you.
That's good to know.
I mean, no, seriously, because I quoted a lot of stuff, especially on the Romanian language podcast, and there are a lot of NPCs in Romania too who follow around and report, but there's no one to read the reports because no one really cares what I say on the Romanian language podcast. But someone really loves you for that.
Yeah, that's good to know. No, but with the podcast, I mean, I'm also speaking here today as an individual. I cannot speak for all of my team members. Like we're quite diverse from the opinions also. We got a MGTOW, I'm married, like there's some differences there. We got a classical liberal. We have one which is still a little bit lefty-ish. But yeah, we're quite diverse. And But for the future, it would be just great to not be censored. Yes.
Yeah, now you mentioned censorship. I saw the re-election campaign posters of Mr. Axel Vosch, who everyone on YouTube should be despising, and if you don't, that means you're either ignorant or an idiot.
Yes.
Axel Vosch is the guy who basically is the architect of the Article 13 and Article 11 pieces of legislation, which if enforced, it would be pretty terrible, and now I still hold the position that they cannot be enforced, so I guess that's the good news. But still, I mean, someone came up with such an idiotic idea and insisted on it, and this guy was also, well, if Google cannot comply with my regulation, essentially, then maybe Google shouldn't exist, which is the kind of thing that you just don't say.
Yes.
What is the general sentiment?
Quite a lot of people were pissed there. That was actually a great moment where a lot of youngsters also went demonstrating, and they really wanted to push for that. There was a couple of years ago, also the ACTA, a couple of years.
Longer, it was longer. Quite a while ago.
Quite a while. But there was quite some awakening. Some people were getting the hashtag trending "Nie wieder CDU, nie wieder SPD," like no more CDU or SPD. And I was quite happy about that, like people getting riled up. But at the other time, I'm thinking about a frog being boiled. Then sometimes I'm thinking like maybe we're the bubble now, which tries to go up. Sometimes I'm thinking we're still the frog, but the pot is a little bit cooking over the Article 13. That is good. And whether you're the frog or you're the bubble, which later makes some waves in the pot, that shall be determined.
Any bets on the election results on the European Parliament?
To be honest, like with Trump, I was really getting into it, and I actually betted on that and made some money. Like.
So did I.
Yeah. and not little, like enough to buy a car.
Well, not that much, but it was enough to pay for 2 of my tours.
Yes.
So, pretty much.
Yes, but this time, I with the prediction, I didn't look too much into it. But I would say that the anti-European part will not lose out too much, but also not gain too much. I think it will be a slow.
So same order, CDU, AfD, SPD?
I would think so.
Or CDU, CSU actually, because they are...
I mean, the Article 13 pissed off a lot of people, but I don't know.
Will that manifest at the polls?
That's the question. And
there's still almost a month till the election. Well, 2 weeks, yeah. Could be.
And people forget. And the thing with the forecast, there was the Philip T. Tadlock. He made a study with a lot of experts, PhDs and professors. Was, if I remember right, 21,000 or 28,000.
28,000,
yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that from the number. Predictions he gathered over a time span of 20 years and then followed up whether they worked, and turned out like all the intelligent PhDs, experts on the field, like really highly intelligent people, all of their judgment were really for the shitter, like they were all crap, didn't work out, and to have a right sense of forecasting, that's quite some tough business.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking you, and I'm not asking a PhD.
Yes.
That's why some people ask me things, because I got it right a lot more often, because I just go to the place. I want to speak about Germany. Let's go to Germany and study, and then we speak about Germany. Yes. Same thing I did with the Ukrainian election. I want to study the sentiment there. I went there for a week and studied, but admittedly I go more often to Ukraine, so that's why. But yeah, so you're expecting basically more of the same, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I think so too. Also today, after what I saw in the Bundestag, like, I'm grateful for being invited. It's not like I want to be disgruntled with them or something, but I was like, this way I'm gonna be blackpilled when I come home. I'm like, with all the love, like if other people are not getting blackpilled by that, then they have way more hope than I do. Like,
yeah, maybe an upping of the level would for sure help. Well, who knows? Maybe 5 years from now, I'll go again to one of these events. Maybe things will change.
Yeah.
Because definitely it shouldn't be evaluated from today till next week. Or something.
And the next thing is like maybe we're also too much focused. Sometimes I think I focus too much on the news. And then when I see something like that, I tend to overvalue it. Maybe it was just a slow day, and maybe that for the other guests it was really helpful, and it's just me because I'm so much in the subject that I'm not taking that much from that. Maybe that for the others it really helped. So I also don't want to be too pessimistic.
Yeah, it is the
realistic,
news junkie bias.
Yeah, exactly. So to keep in touch with reality is sometimes a thin line.
To me it helps because I don't have a smartphone, so every time I'm on these tours I just get disconnected entirely from the news, at least for several days in a row. So it keeps me a little bit grounded. But yeah, maybe it is. Let's just hope that we're wrong.
Yes.
and everyone else is right. I mean, oftentimes I wish that were true.
Yeah, me too.
In any event, Able, thanks a lot for coming, and maybe next time I'll come at your podcast.
Yes.
And hopefully I won't get your channel banned.
Thanks for having me, Lucian. It was really a pleasure. Really cool to meet you.
All right. Then thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you around. I have no idea when, because I have no idea when I'm going to publish this. Cheers.
Freedom alternative.